Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. In today's video, I've got 3 sweet little projects to share with you. And just a reminder, Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be premiering the IOD Holiday Collection. So on my first project, this is an older recycled paper that I picked up last year. And it was really large and I don't really remember what was the other parts of it. But this was the part that I had left. And at our house, we love deer. And so I'd been saving it for just the right project. So I just tore off all the edges to make it look a little bit more natural. And this is a board that I found at Hobby Lobby a while back in the wood department. And I painted it with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream. And now what I'm using is Pentart Decoupage varnish to put it on with. And I just worked my way all the way down. And if you'll notice, it's got those little grooves in it. But for right now, I'm not going to try to fit that paper on each individual piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let it get dry. And then I will go back with like a little X-Acto knife and trim that. And then those extra little pieces of paper that was between the grooves, I'm just going to push it down between the grooves. I'm using just a little piece of cellophane wrap right now to push it down and to make sure that I don't have any wrinkles in it. It's not rice paper, but it's decoupage paper, so it's a little bit thinner. Now, this is a mold, IOD mold from last Christmas. And I believe it's called Holly Lane. And there's one really large holly swag that has some berries on it. And I'm going to be making that mold because it's really large. And so I'm making it with my hot glue gun. Now, I tend to use this every once in a while. And I'm using it today because I'm getting ready for the IOD release and I want to save my resin for those pieces. So I'm using my hot glue guns. And I have 2 hot glue guns. One has a really skinny nozzle and the other one has a wider nozzle. And they are at least 100 watts. So it needs to be super hot so it will come out of the glue gun really easy. Now, the little piece of holly that I'm painting, I actually am taking Dixie Belle Collard Green, and I actually added some black ink. It was the Waverly black ink to it because I needed it to be just a little bit darker. And also on my previous video, I mentioned that the color I was using was kudzu, and it was not, and I apologize for that. It was collard greens, but it's a really dark green, and I really like it, especially at Christmas time. And so I'm just painting all around those edges of the swag, and there are a lot of little intricate edges to it, so it takes me a pretty good while. And then I go back and fill it all in. And if you'll notice that mold is kind of a clear mold, and when you have hot glue molds, they don't have, a lot of color to them until you add that color. So sometimes it takes a couple coats on it, and for some reason the paint doesn't go on just as well, so it needs a couple coats. And then these are some of those little Christmas trees that was on the IOD mold that came out a couple years ago. And so I've got 3 different sizes of those trees, and I'm just using that same mix of colors on those as well. And unfortunately, this mold is really difficult to come by. And if you can find it, people are charging a lot of money for it, but it is a really neat mold. And some people will actually sell those molds on Etsy, and they're made out of resin. So before I put down my molds, though, I use the IOD Vintage Textures, and it's the larger crackle finish. And this is something that I really like. So instead of having to use a crackle finish, you can just use this stamp and it gives that same kind of appearance. and I just go all around the edges. And I believe I use the IOD Stone Gray ink because I want it to be a little bit faint. And sometimes if I use my black ink, it's just a little bit strong. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that little swag mold that I've got. And you can see where the berries are. They're a little bit raised up. So this is just some Waverly paint. And I'm just kind of dabbing it on those berries. I'm not really looking for full coverage because it is bright enough. And then I'm going to be putting it on with Tite Bond glue. And if you notice that little stick in the middle, that was actually to help me measure exactly where the center of that piece was. And so I've got these 3 little molds of the trees, and I'm just trying to kind of figure out exactly how I want to place them. Now, these are actually made out of resin because they're left over from last year. And no, I'm sorry, these are made out of hot glue, but they were made last year. And so if I was using resin, it would be a little bit more difficult to kind of layer them on top of each other. So as I put that bigger one on top, then I'm just laying some little cans of paint on it to kind of hold it down. And then this last little tree is going to be my last one. Well, I know that it's going to take just a little while to get them all dry. So I actually pull out my little clamps that I normally would use for other things. And so I just go ahead and clamp those. And I don't leave those clamps on long enough to mess up the integrity of that mold. But I just need it to hold down those pieces until that glue sets up. So now I'm using that mixture of Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain that I've been using recently. And I put it all over this piece. And it really didn't have to have that. But I decided that I wanted to use it because I wanted to kind of sort of mask where that paper finishes off on that side that right there. And I felt like if it had a little bit of antiquing wax on it, then it would make that edge just a little bit softer. So that was what my intentions were. What I would have done instead is I would have gone a little bit lighter on that paper because I felt like it added too much darkness to that paper. But I still like it, and I still will put it in my booth for sale. But I would do it differently if I was going to do that the next time. And then I just go all around the edges, and I brush it on, and then I go back with the baby wipe to kind of wipe it down. And then if I still think it needs to be a little bit darker, then I can always go back. Now, I felt like I needed to have something down at the bottom to finish it off. So I just used some Spanish moss, and this is my low temperature hot glue gun. And so I'm just going to be putting a little bit of Spanish moss down at the bottom, just because I think of, about the deer. They're out in the woods and, out in the forest. And I kind of wanted to mimic that. Plus, I also wanted something up underneath those trees to kind of see that like they're higher up, and I wanted something up underneath them. Otherwise, I would have put those trees more down to the bottom. And Spanish moss is such a messy task. So I've got to go back and clean all that up when I get it all done. And here's the final project. So what do you think? I really do like it, and we like a lot of deer around our house, and I just think that they're such majestic creatures. And my husband likes to go deer hunting a lot, especially in the wintertime. In the beginning, when we first got married, I wasn't real crazy about it, but we've been married for almost 45 years, and so now I think I love them as much as he does. So my next project is one of those little things that you can get at the Dollar Tree. And it's in the shape of a house, and on the inside of it, it had some paper that was like some blue stripe paper. So it wasn't something that I wanted, but I needed that particular little piece because what I'm going to use it for. And then I just painted the whole piece with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream. And then this is a transfer, and I'll make sure to link it in the description box below. But it's just some little birds, and they're not red like cardinals, but they're almost like a deep coral. And so there were parts of it that I could have trimmed off, but what I did was I pushed that transfer down all the way. So some of the transfer is down at the bottom, and then part of it is up at the top. And it's okay, because I like how it kind of folds over and it kind of extends into the roof. But I think it's really pretty. And if you've not used transfers before, remember to paint it and then put a clear sealer on it and then put the transfer on. And then you need to go back and seal it again. Now, this is just a little frame that I had made up, and it's also painted with the chiffon cream. And this is some little words from the hymn, and it's called "He Keeps Me Singing." And it's a really sweet hymn, and it was something we used to always sing when I was a little girl at church. And so I'm just cutting out the part that talks about I will fly with him with wings on high, something like that. I can't remember exactly. If I had it in front of me, I would be able to read it off. And so then what I did was I took the actual title of the hymn, and I'm just going to glue that to the top of the roof. And so, if cutting up a hymn is a hymnal book is something that maybe is not for you, I just also see it as a way to share my testimony, because this will be something that I go and put in my booth. And so I find hymnal books that are at the thrift shop that nobody else wants. And then when I put it in my booth, it's just something that talks a lot about Jesus. And so for me, that's just a good witnessing tool. So that's the way I see it. And then I put that little frame in, and I put some little blocks of wood to make it stand up. And then I made me a little nest, and I put a couple little birds' eggs in it that I just made with some clay. But I just think it's really pretty, and it just reminds me of how the birds sing to Jesus, as we should as well. But this is really probably my second favorite piece today, but I really like it. So what do you think? So if you're liking this video, make sure to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and become part of our family. Okay, on my last project today, this is some decoupage paper that I got from John L. And it's beautiful. And it's a Christmas rabbit. And there are a lot of people that collect rabbits, and they have them out all year long. I know my sister does. I just thought it was really sweet to be a Christmas rabbit. Now, this is one of those boxes that I found at Walmart. It was in a little pack of 3. And I initially was just going to dry brush it. And then once I did all that, I decided I just was going to go ahead and paint the whole thing. So I'm going back, and I'm painting it with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream, which in the spring and in the summer, I like to use Rust-Oleum linen white. But as it kind of moves on into the fall and Christmas, I think that the chiffon cream is more of a softer tone, and that's why I've been using that a lot. So I just paint the outside and the inside completely before I go back and add that little decoupage paper with the rabbit on it. And when you get ready to put down decoupage paper, you do not have to seal that paint like you do a transfer. So I'll go back and seal it later. Now, this is one of my favorite stamps, and it's called the Alphabelly stamp, and it has all these beautiful little pieces that's just got some pretty swirls on it. And so I just am going all around the outside edges with this little stamp, and I use the stone gray ink because I don't want it to be too bold. And then I also go on the inside around the edges before I put my decoupage paper on, because I don't want that stamp to go over into the decoupage paper. And I'm just using that Pentart decoupage varnish that I really like. And somebody on my last video asked me if I liked it better than DIY patina. And actually, yes, I do. Mod Podge is sometimes pretty thick, and sometimes the DIY liquid patina, it's a little bit thin. And also, I was running out of it, and there's not anybody local that sells it. So I'm getting this from John L. at Decoupage Central, and I really like it, and I'm going to keep using that. Now, these are some different molds that came from the IOD Dainty Flourishes. They put that out in the spring, and I've used it a lot, and so have other people. I think because it's just got some really pretty swirly pieces on it, and there's some longer ones, and they're more skinny pieces. And it's just a really good general mold that you can use for a lot of pieces. And then all of these are made out of hot glue. And so I'm using Dixie Belle French linen to go ahead and get them all painted up. So once I got all the pieces good and dry, now I'm going to do something different with my next shadow box. I did one that had a snowman where I had like a little banner that went across the top. And in my last video, I had a Santa, and he had more of a little rectangular sign that was up at the top. So I thought, well, my next shadow box, I want it to be just a little bit fancy. And so I'm just putting these different molds around the edges. And then there's some little corner molds that I put down at the bottom. Now, this is some really thick paper, and that's the little package it came from. And it's from that Merry and Bright stamp that came out. And it's just a little stamp that says Merry Christmas. And this is a stamp, a mold that I already had made up. And it's just a little frame mold. And I'm just kind of going around the edges of it so I'll know where to cut it out. And then I wasn't really sure what to put down at the bottom, so I just took some greenery and I'm placing that down at the bottom. And then up at the top, I took that paper and put it behind the frame, and I put my little sign up there. And then I put some little bells in there and just a few little pine cones. And this is my favorite piece. I really like the way that this turned out. And see how you can see the stamp on the side. So this one, even though it's in just a wooden box, I think I added enough pieces to it to make it just a little bit more elegant. So what do you think? But this is definitely my favorite piece today. And when I was getting everything set up to make my video tonight, I thought, man, I really want to keep this. But I can't because otherwise I'll have too much at my house for Christmas. So yes, this will be going in my booth. But I do like it. Now here's all of our pieces today. So I've got my sweet little deer sign that's made with Roycycle paper, and it's made with those different IOD molds. And then I've got the little house, which, I've got birds and it's a house, so I'm just kind of pretending that that's my little bird house in my own sort of way. And then I've got my Christmas rabbit. And, as I'm even talking about it right now, I may just take this little rabbit shadow box and just give this to my sister since she does love rabbits so much. But if she watches this video, I guess she's going to find out that I'm going to give it to her. So in the comments below today, tell me what was your favorite. Now, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And be ready, because on Tuesday, when I show you the release, it is going to just blow you away. The pieces are just beautiful. So I will see you Tuesday at 12 o'clock. And I can't wait for you to see it all. Have a great day.